So I've been painting ever since I can remember, painting and drawing. I was always involved in some sort of art and some sort of art making. My father is an artist still to this day, but I grew up being surrounded by it. My mother was a very talented painter. My parents split when I was very young. She left the picture when I was about two. But I grew up with this awareness that my parents made things. And I found it very weird as a kid that other people had to work jobs. Weird and kind of a little bit sad. I mean, dad worked very, very hard, but I just thought, it looked like so much fun. It was just so cool that he got to do that. So I was really blessed to be in that family that by some freak accident, I just ended up with these parents and the circumstances I did. And so it was very natural for me to fall into that. So I don't really ever remember a point where I started being interested in drawing and painting. But I do remember specifically one moment when I decided, all right, it's time to get serious and go professional. And I've said this before in my podcast and in other interviews that I've done. There was a moment in the 11th grade in Australia, because I went through high school in Australia, and I was failing a physics exam. And I remember this, so profoundly that it was, I was sitting there failing, and it was a 3-hour exam. I had the paper sitting in front of me. I had no idea about anything. I didn't pay attention in class or anything, but I thought that I needed that physics qualification to be able to go into architecture, because I was thinking I had a moment of weakness there in my path, and I thought, well, I better have something I can rely on. So maybe I have a trade, but at least it's kind of arty, and I'll get to make stuff, and I'll get to draw stuff. So I was thinking that, and I had some favorite artists of mine. Ted Kautsky was one that I was really influenced by, and he was an architectural draftsman of sorts. He did artistic representations of what buildings would look like, and his work was stunning: pencil, watercolor, oil. And so I thought, well, I'll be an architect. I'll rely on that. So, but there was a moment I was sitting there in this physics exam, failing, and then I just thought, what am I doing this for? Why don't I just jump all in and be an artist? And I remember thinking that, and that thought being so heavy for me as a young lad. And then from that moment on, it was like, nope, I'm going to be an artist. So my senior year of high school was the next year. I was all about the art. And then I went in to do a fine arts degree at a tertiary institution, got my degree, got my qualification, of which I've never been asked for. But I'm fully qualified if anyone wants to know. Yeah. And then from there, I went full time, probably 2000, probably towards the end of 2003, then going on 2004, I started getting my first commissions in university, and I had my first solo exhibition in 2002. So I was well into it, even when I was in university. So it's been over 20 years ago.